what? It's something that has helped me incredibly in my life.
Yeah.
And I've been a Scientologist for over 30 years.
Yeah.
When Suri Noel Cruz stepped into the public eye with a recent candid revelation, the world paused for a moment. The daughter of one of Hollywood's most iconic figures, Tom Cruise, and acclaimed actress Katie Holmes, Suri has long been a figure of curiosity, shaped by tabloid speculation, seen in glimpses on the streets of New York, but never directly heard. Her words marked a striking pivot from the silence that had surrounded the inner dynamics of her childhood. What emerged wasn't a scandalous expose or a bitter accusation, but a personal reflection on how the very public and very complex divorce between her parents had quietly sculpted her relationship with her father. Before we start, smash the like and subscribe buttons for more updates. The world remembers the divorce of Tom Cruise and Katie Holmes in 2012 as one of Hollywood's most surprising splits. After a whirlwind romance and high-profile wedding, the couple's sudden unraveling stunned fans. But behind the media frenzy, there was a 6-year-old girl who was living the reality, not just observing it through television screens or magazine covers. For Suri, the dissolution of her parents' marriage marked not just the end of a family unit, but the beginning of a significant shift in her relationship with her father. The effects of parental separation can ripple through a child's life in subtle and profound ways. For Suri, the impact was uniquely magnified by her parents' fame and the spotlight constantly trained on them. While most children of divorce navigate these emotional waters in private, her reality was dissected by the press, often with wild speculation and little regard for her actual experience. This intrusive scrutiny likely compounded the personal and emotional terrain she was already trying to map. From her earliest years, her life was divided not just between two parents, but between two very different worlds. Tom Cruise's association with the Church of Scientology added another complex layer to this family dynamic. Although it was never officially confirmed that religion played a decisive role in the divorce, the timing and subsequent events raised many questions. After the separation, Tom's presence in Suri's life seemed to fade from the public eye. Despite his public expressions of love for his daughter in years prior, there was a noticeable shift. As she grew, Suri was increasingly seen with her mother Katie, living what appeared to be a quiet, grounded life in New York City, far from the grand, larger-than-life universe her father often occupied. As Suri began her teenage years, her life continued to drift away from the sphere of her father, not in scandal, not in confrontation, but in silence. Her public appearances suggested a sense of distance, a young girl moving forward in a world distinctly shaped by her mother's influence. Katie Holmes seemed to embrace a role that emphasized normalcy, enrolling Suri in school, shielding her from unnecessary attention, and creating a semblance of a typical upbringing. This strategy, while effective in fostering stability, may have simultaneously widened the emotional and relational gap between Suri and Tom. For a child, the absence of a parent during formative years doesn't just leave a space. It shapes perception. It informs identity. While Tom Cruise continued to captivate audiences with his high-octane film roles and enduring box office appeal, Suri was crafting her sense of self in his absence. Her revelation about how the divorce affected her relationship with her father wasn't just about missed birthdays or holidays, it hinted at something deeper. An emotional distance, an absence of presence, and perhaps a yearning that was never quite fulfilled. What's particularly telling is that Suri didn't grow up in obscurity. Despite the protective barrier Katie constructed around her daughter, Suri's upbringing unfolded under the watchful gaze of a public fascinated by her famous parents. Yet, even with that visibility, her father remained largely absent in those public moments. School recitals, walks through the city, graduations. Each of these became symbolic milestones that reflected not only the passage of time, but the quiet evolution of a relationship that was defined as much by what was missing as by what remained. Children of divorce often wrestle with competing loyalties and fragmented attachments. In Suri's case, this was potentially exacerbated by the stark differences in her parents' lives. One world, structured, grounded, and centered on daily routines and maternal closeness. The other, dynamic, global, and orbiting around fame, faith, and an empire built on cinematic mythos. These worlds didn't just contrast each other, they appeared at times incompatible. And for Suri, caught in the middle, choosing a path may have meant more than just emotional allegiance. It may have defined the very contours of her identity. The emotional cost of such division can be invisible to those outside. To the public, it might have seemed like a quiet drift. No public disputes, no court battles splashed across headlines after the initial divorce. But within that calm was a deeper story of disconnection. Suri's words bring that story into sharp relief. They suggest a child who waited, who noticed, and who ultimately formed her own understanding of what it means to be loved, to be prioritized, and to feel seen. Tom Cruise, despite his towering fame, remained silent on many aspects of his personal life post-divorce. This silence, while perhaps protective, may have also contributed to the sense of distance Suri experienced. In a world where presence often means more than performance, his lack of visible involvement may have inadvertently signaled detachment. And for a child, interpretation often fills the space left by silence. Questions arise. Why isn't he here? Did I do something wrong? Does he care? These silent inquiries can echo for years, shaping not only relationships but self-worth. Suri's decision to speak out is powerful, not because it exposes or accuses, but because it humanizes. It reminds the world that behind celebrity divorces are real lives and raw emotions. Her experience speaks to a broader truth about how children process absence and how the choices of adults ripple through the lives of those least empowered to influence them. For every headline about celebrity breakups, there are children constructing their worldviews around broken promises, missed connections, and unresolved emotions. What makes Suri's revelation especially compelling is the emotional maturity behind it. She doesn't present a tale of blame, but one of recognition. She acknowledges how a pivotal event in her childhood shaped her connection with a parent, not with resentment, but with clarity. This kind of insight often takes years to develop and suggests a young woman who has done the internal work of making sense of her story. Her narrative, while personal, resonates with universal themes of longing, growth, and emotional distance. The image of Tom Cruise leaping on Oprah's couch, proclaiming his love for Katie Holmes, once symbolized a fairy tale romance. That image stands in stark contrast to the emotional chasm that later developed between father and daughter. The evolution from public adoration to quiet estrangement mirrors the unpredictability of real relationships, those that don't conform to Hollywood scripts or idealized portrayals. For Suri, that contrast likely became part of her emotional reality, challenging her to reconcile memory with experience, myth with truth. As she continues to come into her own, Suri's voice may only grow more confident. Her willingness to reflect on her past signals a readiness to define herself beyond the shadows of her parents' fame. It also speaks to a generation of young adults who are reclaiming their narratives, who aren't afraid to speak about emotional wounds, and who understand that silence is not the same as healing. The story of Suri and Tom Cruise, as she tells it, isn't finished. It is suspended, held in a space between what was, what could have been, and what still might be. The absence of closure doesn't diminish its importance. In fact, it underscores the emotional weight of relationships that remain unresolved. Sometimes the pain of what's missing says more than the presence of conflict. And in Suri's case, that quiet pain seemed to shape much of her journey. Her relationship with her mother, in contrast, appears deeply rooted and constant. Katie Holmes has often been credited with providing Suri a grounded, loving environment amid the turbulence of fame and separation. That consistency likely served as an emotional anchor. But even with strong maternal support, the absence of paternal presence leaves an imprint. It's not about replacing one parent with another. It's about the unique role each one plays in shaping a child's emotional landscape. Suri's experience challenges the romanticized notion that fame and fortune can insulate families from emotional turmoil. If anything, the public nature of her family's struggles may have intensified the impact. Her narrative punctures the illusion that celebrity equates to stability. It reinforces the truth that emotional neglect can exist even within the most gilded lives. As more children of public figures begin to tell their own stories, Suri's voice adds a valuable dimension. It invites empathy rather than voyeurism, reflection rather than judgment. Her account isn't just about what Tom Cruise did or didn't do. It's about how a daughter internalized absence, and how that shaped her understanding of connection, trust, and belonging. What remains particularly poignant is the sense of longing that underlies her revelation. Not a dramatic plea or an accusatory outburst, but a quiet, reflective ache. This isn't just the story of a daughter whose relationship with her father changed after a divorce. It's the story of a child who had to grow up wondering what closeness could have looked like had circumstances been different. The complexity of her emotions mirrors the complexity of human relationships. Divorce doesn't just separate partners, it reconfigures the emotional geography of an entire family. For Suri, that reconfiguration led to a growing distance that was never fully bridged. And now, as she steps into adulthood, she carries both the scars and the strength that such experiences can bring. If you like this video, please give it a like and subscribe to our channel. Also, leave your comments below and tell us, what are your thoughts on Suri's reveal? Will this change her bond with Tom? We want to hear from you. Thank you for watching and see you next time.